And we're going to go directly into our topic tonight with our guest, which is David Schroeder. A new cycle is calling us. A new cycle is upon us, calling for our love, which is very appropriate since he's written a book. The book is called Just Be Love, and it's just coming out in its second edition. So keep your eyes open for that. I'm delighted to introduce David tonight. He is a good friend of ours. He's also a clinical social worker and has a practice here in Grand Rapids, transition pathways, right. He actually comes from Illinois, I believe. And how many of us have actually met our spouse or our significant others at El Camino Trail in Europe? Not too many of us, I don't think. I'm sure there's a few stories there too. But we're very, very happy to have David here tonight. Enjoy being entertained in more ways than one. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. There we go.
Okay. Got the other hug first. That's traditional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming in this kind of gloomy and night. Kind of like we should be trick-or-treating tonight with the rain and the cold and all that. So, I'm going to squeeze in 26,000 years in about 35 minutes. So we're going to go kind of quickly. This is actually a presentation that I've offered several times over the last several months. And most of this, hopefully, it'll be reinforcing to you. Some of it will be new, and much of it is a culmination of about the last 10 years or so of me just being real intrigued with what's going on around the world and in the cosmos, for that matter. And we're in it right now more fully, this great cycle and a new age. And one of the things I've come to appreciate, it's calling us to not fall in love anymore. It's what I call to rise as love. And so in my studying the ancients of the Aztecs and the Incas, the Egyptians, and the Mayans, and even the Native Americans, I'm going to give you some information that much of the ancients have prophesied, with the understanding that a lot of what they're prophesizing, we are now in it. Okay? Does anybody realize that the world is kind of going a little wacky? Okay. And what would you say to me if I said it's all right on schedule?
You're wacky.
And it was predicted in many ways. Okay? So I'm going to draw mostly from the Mayans. And I was down in Maya land in 2012 on 12/21, and it was quite a happening in many ways. It was quite a love fest there. And this was just shortly after sunrise in that morning. In fact, we started out in a cenote earlier that morning, which is an underground water pool. And it's absolutely beautiful. You're looking up at the roots of the trees above you. So you're literally in the earth. And so the Mayans had most of their pyramids they built with levels. And there was specifically nine steps. And each step could be seen as a span of time, and it had a particular theme to it. And each level, the bottom levels are basically happening in millions or billions of years. As we get up to the end of the calendar, of the pyramid, things that would take millions or billions of years are now going to happen in years or just months, maybe even days. And each level would get approximately 20% shorter than the previous level. Does anybody notice time speeding up and becoming much more intense? Well, that's mainly because we're here now. And their calendar, or a lot of people predicted it was the end of the world. Well, in their eyes, in their understanding, it wasn't the end of the world, it was just the end of the world as we knew it. It was the end of one cycle and the moving into another cycle. And you could literally say we're going from the third or fourth dimension, and now we're more readily going into what we would call the fifth dimension, and where time and space collapses. And in the center of their calendar was depicted a sun, and it looked like an angry sun. And what we know now is the sun has been heating up, and it's sending increasingly more solar winds and solar flares. With greater intensity and frequency now than ever before. In fact, NASA, late this summer, they launched a solar probe that's traveling 90 million miles to the sun. Because we know now something's up. And so that's NASA studying it, okay? And one of the things, my theory is, as the sun is heating up, it impacts dramatically the Earth and the frequency of the Earth. And to me, there's a direct correlation between that and our level of consciousness. Because it's happened before. Thousands, even perhaps millions of years ago, we went through this transition. So it's really not new. It's just repeating itself, and that's what cycles do. They come and they go. And I'll just back up. I'm going to refer to 3 songs tonight. The first song was written by a Beatle, and all 3 of these songs were written in the late 60s, early 70s. The first song was written by a Beatle, George Harrison, who wrote Here Comes the Sun. And if we had longer time, I would read you some of the words. But if you look at the lyrics of the song, he's speaking of what's going to happen to the Earth. And it's driven by the sun, okay? He knew something. So we have to think in terms of cycles, frequencies, and vibrations. And one of the things that's happened with humanity over the years is we've forgotten this. But the ancients knew this. They studied the cycles. They understood vibration and frequency, and we're now just coming back to that, okay? So as the sun is doing its thing, and it's bombarding the Earth with the solar winds and the solar flares, it's loosening up the magnetic field of the Earth. And there's theories that the sun is going, the poles on the sun will shift, and perhaps even the poles on planet Earth will shift. But there's a concept called entrainment. And entrainment means to follow or draw with. So as the sun is doing its thing and it's bombarding the Earth is going with the sun because the frequency of the Earth is increasing. And I'll show you that in a moment. So since the Earth is part of the sun, it's going to go with it in terms of its frequency. Since we are a part of the Earth and a part of the sun, our frequency is going to increase. Okay? You with me? So, there's a concept called the Schumann resonance, and it was discovered by a German physicist back in 1954, Otto Schumann, who discovered a frequency of the Earth, and it was measured at 7.83 hertz. And fascinating thing, from 1954 to 2014, the frequency of the planet doubled. It went from that 7.8 to about 14, 16 hertz. Okay? So it took 60 years to double. From 2014 to 2018, where we are now, roughly 4 years, it's doubled again. So it took 60 years to double. Now it's only taken 4 years to double again. Hello. Something's up. Okay? Easter Sunday of this year, there was a spike of over 50. Easter Sunday of last year, 2017, there was a spike of 90. And several weeks after that, it spiked over 100. This year alone, we've been averaging about 35 hertz overall. Okay, and there was periods in February where we were above 40, 45, almost more often than not during that month. And I think it was near the end of August of this year when we had some major solar flares and solar winds. This was off the chart. You can Google this. Every day you can see where it's at, okay? But the reality is the frequency of the Earth is increasing. And this is the heartbeat, if you will, or the heart rhythm of the Earth. So what does this have to do with us? What's the big deal? Well, let's go to brain waves. They're measured in hertz. And when we're in that delta wave, it would be called pretty much being in that induced coma. In order to have optimal healing and your immune system to really kick in. When you're in so in that deep sleep, there's that loss of body awareness. You're just in the zone, okay? If we're in theta, we're in REM or dream sleep, and your eyes are going back and forth really rapidly, and that's your brain's natural way of trying to reprocess things. There's techniques I do with clients where we stimulate the REM sleep in order to release the traumas and things like that that are stored in the mind and the body. The alpha waves can be seen as the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious. Now, when we get into beta, now we're in those higher frequencies, and so we're going to have a heightened consciousness. Our memory, our problem solving is going to be able to be quicker and more enhanced, and we're going to be able to retain things much quicker. And when we're in the gamma, which is 40 and above, this really taxes our system because we're not used to it. And it creates a lot of anxiety in people. People who have severe anxiety, they're often, unfortunately, hanging into that gamma waves too much. And the body, it just taxes the body and the mind. But this is where we're headed. Okay? We're going to be more in those beta and gamma waves, and the key is, it's kind of like when we get a new medicine, our body can't handle it. So it goes through that trial period where it's trying to adapt and adjust. And that's where a lot of the ascension symptoms and signs is strictly the body, the mind, trying to get used to the higher frequencies, okay? Anxiety is becoming more prevalent now than depression on the planet. And I believe this is one of the main factors of that, is because we're going into those higher gamma waves that we aren't quite used to yet, okay? The ringing in the ears. How many have a ringing in the ear once in a while? What would you say to me if I said that's always there? You're just not hearing it, and the brain's not picking it up so much. As we move into these higher frequencies and we get more used to it, you're going to, oh, that's what that is. And your brain will be more used to it, okay? There was a master teacher by the name of Jesus. And as I was writing my book, some of the messages that I got were from Jesus or Yeshua. And I came to appreciate in his passage, in my Father's house are many mansions. When he says the word house in his language, which was Aramaic, he's saying, in my Father's house, in the totality of the universe. The word house means the totality of the universe, or the totality of us. So in my Father's house, in the totality of the universe, there are many mansions. There are many dimensions beyond this physicality, beyond what you see as normal. Science says that 96%, approximately 96% of the universe is undetectable by the human senses. We've just scratched the surface. And this is what he's saying. In the Father's house, in the totality of the universe, there is so much more to you and so much more of the universe. And that's where we're headed in terms of this new cycle, is realizing how expansive we really are. So there's the great cycle, approximately 26,000 years, called the precession of the equinox. And it's basically the Earth's wobble going through all 12 constellations of the zodiac. And it takes just under 26,000 years to complete. What we've learned is that there's depending on where we're at in the constellation, there's either a rise or a fall in human consciousness. Jesus came just shortly after the beginning of the Piscean era. And his main role, for the most part, was to usher in a higher dimension of love and fellowship and the teaching of universal or divine laws, which are totally contrary in many ways to man's laws. And him and Mary Magdalene, who was his closest confidant, they were the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. And Mary was her own wisdom keeper in her own right, but because of the times and the consciousness of the times, they had to make Mary into a prostitute and suppress the feminine energy yet again. I want you to think of a consciousness of Pisces in general, and it's not so much about your birth sign, okay? The consciousness of Pisces on a human level, it's been about us versus them. It's been about fear. It's been about greed. And greed is nothing more than power without love and wisdom. And it's been about exclusion. And it's been about power over. And it's been the suppression of the feminine energy. Okay? The word Aquarius, which is where we've moved into now, the last two letters of that word spell the word us. Wow. So the Aquarian consciousness is about love. It's about fellowship. It's about unity. It's about inclusion. And it's about power with. And it's about the merging of science, religion, spirituality, and such. And it's the rise or the reemergence of the feminine. Anybody see that playing out today? Especially in the last year with the whole Me Too movement. India has, in the last several months, has passed some major referendums that makes women more including. Saudi Arabia is going through their own thing. And a lot of the young girls that come to this country to go to college, they're not going back. And they're basically telling their father, so what? I don't need your money. I'm staying here. And it's happening more and more. So we're moving, we're on the upswing in terms of consciousness, okay? And this is where we're at now. And it's a totally different consciousness. When I was in Peru in 2011, the shaman there said, a third of the population would be leaving, as in, I'm out of here. And he said another third would go more nuts. And the other third would wake up. You choose. You see that playing out. Okay? And because we've got this struggle now with these two frequencies, the old frequency that's losing its momentum and all that, okay? And this is a dynamic of human change. This happens regardless. But we've got what has been, and that old energy and old ways of being in terms of government, healthcare, education, you name it. And then we've got this new wave that's coming. All right, and the space between what has been and what will be, this is where the chaos and the turbulence and the struggle and the uncertainty is. And we're right smack in it right now. Okay? And the reason this is hanging on and doing everything it can is because it knows its days are numbered. And the ego is such, whenever there's change and it knows it's losing, it's going to hang on tighter for a while. And that's kind of where we're at in society and around the world. Okay? But their energies and that vibration is no longer going to be able to sustain itself. Our current president, I believe, was elected Well, let me back up. How many woke up November 10th or whenever it was and said, oh my God, what just happened? Yeah. All right. It's my understanding he was elected on the spiritual level, to expose the shadow, both within himself and on a collective level. And the shadow is what we've denied, repressed, or projected onto somebody or something else. Do you see that playing out? Okay. So it's all right on schedule. It's all happening in perfect order. All right. So let's talk about ascension for a moment. Ascension is happening both on a planetary and a human level and a cosmic level. And on the human level, it can be seen as the acceleration of vibrational energy and frequency to enhance spiritual learning and growth, creating an expansion in awareness which shifts human consciousness and behaviors. All right? That's where we're going. And some people are really excited about it and hopping on board, and other people are going, hey, it's no big deal. And then they wonder, what the heck is going on? Okay? So it's happening to everybody, whether you realize it or not, and whether you admit it or not, it's happening. All right. And there's a bunch of signs and symptoms that I'm sure a lot of you know, and we don't have time to go into that much. But, all right. So on this spiritual journey, and this guy back here, I didn't have this slide in early this morning, and he says, oh, you're going to have that one slide, aren't you? So I put this.
That's my favorite.
So this thing called a spiritual awakening, it's like the bottom is falling out, and it's like, oh, pardon my French, oh shit, what's happening? Okay, because many of the things that we thought were normal are disintegrating more rapidly. Okay, so it's with this that I have come to appreciate and realize this is all calling us to rise as love. And by the way, the second song that was written in the 60s and 70s was sung. It wasn't actually written by them, but it was sung by a group called The Fifth Dimension. And they wrote a song called The Age of Aquarius. And if you read those words, it talks about astrology and numerology and astronomy, which are the oldest sciences in the world. It talks about understanding that the movement of the planet and the stars is going to mess with our consciousness and all that. And it was also talking about harmony and unity and the mind's liberation, which basically means the ego is transcended. Okay? And then there was a third song that also kind of reinforced the Aquarian consciousness that ironically was written by another Beatle, John Lennon. And it was ironic that these two Beatles died at a relatively early age. But he wrote the song Imagine, which when you listen to those words, they're all about the Aquarian consciousness. And it's all about unity and fellowship and letting go of all the old dramas and traumas and all that. So, to rise is love. It's not falling in love anymore. That's a construct of the ego. And when you say you want to fall in love, what you're basically saying, I'm in need and I'm in lack. And that's all ego. You have everything you need and there's nothing you lack. But the reality is, we've all been through this thing, what I call spiritual amnesia. In other words, we came here with some certain agreements that we would take on, and so that we would forget that we are love, innocence, and goodness. And we're all on this journey back to remembering that innocence, that goodness, and the love that we are. True? So the reality is we don't have to fall into something we already are, which is love. Okay? And how many of you have been hurt by love? Yeah. I'm going to shatter a paradigm right now. Love does not hurt. Love does not hurt. It can't hurt. What hurts is our thoughts, our perceptions, our expectations, or excuse me, our beliefs. And those are all going to create an expectation, and they're going to create a set of behaviors. And that's what hurts us in the name of love. It's the expectations, it's that belief, it's that perception I have. That's what ultimately hurts us. Love in and of itself does not hurt. If something hurts you, it's usually fear or an unmet expectation that I bought into and you didn't meet, and so you hurt me. But the reality is I'm the one that had the expectation, okay? The search for love, hold on to your seatbelts. The search for love ends when you have the awareness, I am love. The search for love will end when you have the awareness, I am love. And once you're done searching, you've transcended the ego. Does that make sense? A hard one. But that's what we're going towards, is realizing we don't need to search anymore. It's already there. It always has been. We've just forgotten. Okay? So, we're going to learn to be a star. And to be a star, the first step of that is to surrender. And in this case, it's not surrender from the ego standpoint is giving up and giving in. It's about losing. Surrender from the spiritual standpoint is letting go with the intent of gaining more than you're going to lose. By the way, the fall colors, the leaves are the most beautiful during the fall, and it's during that time that they let go, that they fall away. Nature is telling us something. So the surrender is to surrender to the divine will and way. Not our will, but the divine will. And then from the surrender we trust, and trust requires an element of faith that the universe and my higher self has my back. And I'll be taken care of no matter what. Faith, if you think an acronym of faith, faith is full acceptance in thy heart. Full acceptance, not in your head, but in thy heart. That's what faith is. From the trust and that, you begin to allow. And so you start to flow like water. And you trust, and you have confidence, and you're standing firm, but you're also flowing like the water. Wherever there's a mountain, there's water. So in these times now, it's about standing like a mountain, but you flow like water. And so that you can go around and through and overcome the barriers that are going to happen. Okay? And so when you surrender, you trust, you allow, then you will receive. And the key is to be open and worthy of receiving. And there's a chance that you will not get what you want, but you will get exactly what you need. And that's a big key with receiving. You have to be okay that you might not get what you want, but you will get what you need, especially for your soul evolution and growth. So, let's be a star. Okay? Now, one of the big things in terms of riding this wave and change, by the way, change is uncertainty. And Tony Robbins gave a powerful quote about uncertainty, because uncertainty says, I don't have control in this moment. The degree of uncertainty you can tolerate is directly related to the quality of your life. As people get more fearful and anxious or whatever, and if they can't handle the uncertainty, they're going to go more and more wacky. Okay? those of us who can handle the uncertainty and just kind of ride it out, we're going to get through it a lot more grace and ease, if you will. Okay? So we want to find balance in mind, body, and spirit. And even though this is a very serious endeavor, and it's impacting humanity and the planet, okay? Can you take yourself lightly? Can you be a little goofy in it all? Can you laugh at your insanity? Okay? Can you be more childlike rather than childish in all this? Because if you're more childish, you're going to get swallowed up by this wave big time. And we can see that happening more and more. So the key is to take yourself lightly within the seriousness of this evolution. And we are taking an evolutionary leap in human consciousness. Okay? You know why angels can fly? They take themselves lightly. Yes. Okay? And that's where we're at. Taking ourselves lightly within a very serious endeavor. So, we're embarking on this thing called to rise as love. I would entertain to you that it's not Christ coming down. It's us rising in consciousness. It's us rising as love to meet our beloved. Okay? It's us going up. It's not Christ coming down. It's us meeting that Christ. Okay? That's what will really heal humanity and bring peace on earth, is when we raise our consciousness. And that's what this is all about raising our consciousness. Okay? And so it's about ascending. Oop. What happened? Oop, there's a slide in there that's missing. Okay. It's about ascending in the energy of love. And returning to the love and the goodness we are. It's that simple. The reason it's so complex is because we have this thing called an ego, and we have traumas and all that. So the great masters learned and offered, they were able to freely love to love. Freely love to love. And so as we ascend, that's what it's about, is to be able to freely love to love without the expectations, without the demands, and all that. And so I'd like to read you a poem from my book. It's called Love is Awareness. Now I go down into that one. So close your eyes and just take in the words. Love is awareness. Love is not found in the thought of love. Love is found in the awareness, I am love. It is through our humanity that we remember our divinity. It is with our holy breath that we commune and communicate with all that is. It is for us to remember with higher awareness that God is love, and all that makes up the universe is the expression of this love. It is not who we love, it is that we love. So let us rise as love, for this will be our remembering, and this will reclaim our innocence and the expression of our divinity. Thank you.